the Guild of Sketchwriters is in mourning still for Prescott. But we had Prescott, who lined up his ministerial advisors next to him at a party conference once, and said, "Conference," he said, "conference," or may have said comrades even. He said, "Look at them, how can I not lose with them?" And we realised he means exactly the opposite. Over the last 13 years, we had numerous Tory leadership campaigns. And they came like number 23 buses at one point. And we were all in the Commons corridor one time, waiting for the vote to result, the people to vote, and the Tory MPs to vote for their new leader. And Peter Luff came past. And he said, "I'm Andrew Morrison's popsy." And we all took this as a tremendous disclosure, because Andrew Morrison is a Conservative MP, it was Peter Luff outing himself. And actually it turned out what he'd said was, "I'm Andrew Morrison's proxy." Things like that keep us sketchwriters going for days. Then we had the routine, regular horror, complete horror of the gay debates in the House of Lords. We kept having these things when the Labour government, quite rightly, was pushing through rules making it fairer, to use the expression of the moment, for gay people. Anyway, the House of Lords debates were excruciating but somehow riveting. And so you had Lord Longford, who once compared homosexuality to schizophrenia and a tendency to alcohol. This caused outrage. All the alcoholics in the House of Lords were A man called Lord Selsdon, who's a hereditary Tory, he stood up in that same debate and he said, "I've eaten the private parts of a green monkey, but it didn't match gay sex for danger." He said this with a certain regret. That's what he needed. And then Lord McCall, who's a sort of a bespectacled quack of some type, he stood up and started talking about rubber chemistry and technology magazine. Whereupon all the people from Hansard said, "Oh, that's interesting, I didn't know about that." I mean, politics is fun, it's personalities, it's ludicrousness. There's so much talk about the policies in politics. I'm much more interested in the personalities, because I think that they inform the policies. And it's the personalities that thrust through the laws, and without the personalities they can never get away with half the stuff that they do. But it's not all about legislation either at Parliament. There's the jollies on the side, there's the annual dog show, where the peers and the MPs show off their dogs and a few of the journalists. And a lovely collection of dogs every year you get coming along. There was this beautiful red setter one time, which was owned by the political editor of The Sun. And there was a table, the Kennel Club runs this thing very generously. They lay on tea and biscuits, and the red setter got up on the table with its two front paws and started licking the custard cream. And I said, "Get away, stop it." And it did as told. But then a tremendously fat chap came along. I think he was some sort of Commons researcher, and sort of looked greedily at the plate of biscuits and reached straight for the very custard cream that had just been licked. And I didn't want to stop him, I just watched it slide in. It was a delicious moment. And that was the dog show at which Black Rod, who was a senior military man called General Sir Michael Wilcox, very good egg, he disclosed that he had a black Labrador called Sugar. Nothing to do with that dreadful man, Lord Sugar. My sworn enemy. He's got a book out. Do not buy that book, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, I said that at lunch the other day, and the sales director from the publisher was sitting next to me. I didn't realise at the time. But anyway, Wilcox had this black Labrador called Sugar, and he took it off on a weekend, stayed in a hotel. And Sugar, the dog, slept in the room with him, as you know, that's all right, isn't it? And in the morning, the maid brought in the tea tray, and she was taking it over to the table. And Sugar, the dog, started leaping, leapt up, and was about to run for the door. And Wilcox said, "Sugar!" like that. And the maid said, "It's on the tray, sir!" So, they keep us going at Westminster. There was the time on the general election campaign in 2001, Tony Blair, they're always terrible, sort of fraudulent events, they are, the terrible things, these general election campaigns. It's all done for image. And we lacked a photograph that day. And so the Labour spin doctor said, "OK, we'll have a picture of Tony going to a fish and chip shop." And a scene of terrible destruction and violence ensued because the TV crews wanted to catch Mr. Blair walking along the street, and they always reverse the TV crews, because of course they know they're taking, actually they don't do that anymore, do the TV crews, but they were taking photographs of Blair walking down, they were reversing, and they were sort of mowing down innocents in their way, old ladies and mothers with pushchairs and everything. But anyway, Blair then enters the fish and chip shop and is so busy grinning at the paparazzi, who, you know, he always had an eye, he's like a sunflower to the source of the media. And there he was, grinning at the media, pouring the sauce. He'd never been in an efficient chip shop, I think, because he didn't realise that in chip shops, the salt cellar is very, they pour fast. So there he was, posing for about 4 seconds, and I in just this mound of salt. Totally inevitable. And then we had the time that Dalai Lama came along. What a sweet man. Dressed all in orange and sort of looking earnest. Everyone mistook him for a little Democrat. And he was doing his namaste thing, and of course all these terrible sort of greasy MPs were all doing the namaste back. And then he came into the select committee room, and somebody in the hubbub, in all the clamour of his arrival, managed to hit their leg against a metal part of the table. And it let out this tremendous clong. So, and all the people around the Dalai Lama, they thought it was a temple gong. Fell to their prayers. But the Dalai, or the Lama, very nice fellow, there was a moment longer, and I was sitting nearby, and I said to him, "What have you got in your bag?" Because he had a little handbag, and a sort of man bag. And he rummaged around and pulled out a banana. And he said, "My lunch!" So I always wondered whether David Miliband got the idea from the Dalai Lama. But there is a tendency, I know that you oldies would never fall for this, of saying things ain't what they used to be. And that the characters in politics are no good these days. And we think back to the tremendous halcyon days of George Brown. My gosh, I wish I'd been able to sketch him. And all the old figures of yesteryear. But actually, I'm going to put in a plea here, because the current lot, we've got one or two quite promising items, quite good little specimens coming up. Michael Gove, for instance. I've got those sort of flapping trousers and sort of bulbous fleshy lips, and a very bright guy, but he just doesn't. I mean, I've known Michael for a long time. I've got a dark secret to tell you about Gove, actually, is that he used to fancy Lady Trumpington, but that's another day's story. He looks like a sort of cross between Keith Joseph and Stan Laurel. And there he was, the second day of the government, he walked up Downing Street, and he hit a skid patch, and did a tremendous, he went arse over tit, and fell in front of all the cameras. And I thought, there is a man devoted to public service, so devoted that he's prepared to fall over like that. We've got Danny Alexander, who's the Chief Secretary of the Treasury, who looks like a beaker from the Muppet Show, like a carrot with that. He's got lots of promise. Alan Johnson, the new Shadow Chancellor, he can't count. Is this a good idea, Mr. Miliband, we say? If you said to him Keynes, he would not necessarily think John Maynard, he would think Milton. If you give Alan Johnson a Treasury graph, he won't necessarily know which way up to hold it. But this doesn't matter. He's going to be good for us. He's going to be good for box office. Sarah Teller. Do you know what I mean by Teller? She's the same height as Ian McCartney. An education minister who's actually shorter than many of the children in our schools. We've got the Archbishop of Canterbury in public life, that wonderful clematis of a beard. I mean, we could not have dreamt of that man. It's as long as a ball of wool, that beard. Long may he reign over us. And then we've got Mr. Squeaker. The new Mr. Squeaker and his wife. She's, in boxing terminology, she's got reach. She's very tall, and you don't want to get too close to Mrs. Burko for several reasons. We've got Prince Philip still in our public life. I mean, there is the oldies centre pin-up for years. What a great man. And the last thing I'm going to close by saying is that there is a vacancy in our public life at the moment. We are looking for a new chairman of the BBC, and you look at the job spec. And this is a position that needs maturity. The successful applicants, as they say, will not be partisan, will be from outside the television world, I think, will have an aesthetic, yet somehow be ascetic as well, not be too interested in money, and have a sense of detachment, a sort of sense of mouldy wisdom. That's what we want from the new chairman of the BBC. And I thought to myself, as I come into this lunch, who could the perfect candidate be?